The crystalline ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, its prismatic surface reflecting the morning sun in a dazzling display. Master Zexthor stood at the observation deck, his four arms crossed in contemplation as he watched the sprawling complex of the Solar Arts Academy grow larger below. His ceremonial blades, each from a different star system, hung with perfect balance at his sides. "Quite primitive," he murmured, noting the traditional architecture mixed with modern elements. The Academy's main building featured sweeping curves reminiscent of ancient Asian design, yet its walls incorporated standard atmospheric shielding. Nothing like the grand floating dogos of the Centaurian homeworld. As the ship settled onto the landing pad, a small welcoming committee awaited him. Zexthor adjusted his ceremonial robes, the fabric shimmering with embedded starlight, and descended the boarding ramp with practiced grace. His iridescent scales caught the sunlight, creating an impressive display that had earned him respect across 7 star systems. The Academy's director, Dr. Sarah Chen, stepped forward with a polite bow. "Master Zexthor, welcome to Earth. We are honored by your presence and evaluation of our martial arts programs." Zexthor returned the gesture with precise formality. "The Centaurian Blade Council extends its greetings. I trust arrangements have been made for my assessment. Of course, we've prepared demonstrations from our finest instructors, though I believe you'll find particular interest in our traditional weapons program." Dr. Chen gestured toward the main building. "If you'll follow me, we can begin with a tour of our training facilities." As they walked through the Academy grounds, Zexthor observed students practicing various forms. His upper right hand instinctively touched the hilt of his energy blade, noting the inefficient movements and reliance on muscle power rather than gravitational manipulation. They reached a modest dojo where a class was in session. Inside, a human instructor moved with curious efficiency, demonstrating a simple sword form to his students. His movements lacked the ethereal grace of Centaurian blade dancing, yet something about them caught Zexthor's attention. "This is Marcus Chen, our traditional weapons master," Dr. Chen introduced. "He specializes in preserving and teaching historical Earth sword styles." Marcus paused his instruction and approached, wearing simple training clothes and carrying a wooden practice sword. He bowed with respect, but Zexthor noticed a quiet confidence in his bearing that seemed at odds with his basic appearance. "Master Zexthor," Marcus greeted, "would you honor us by observing a demonstration?" The alien master's secondary eyes blinked in mild amusement. "Very well. Though I must admit, I find it curious that you train with wooden implements when energy blades are readily available." Marcus smiled slightly. "We believe in mastering the basics before adding complexity. Would you like to see a traditional kata?" Zexthor gestured his assent with his lower arms, while his upper arms remained formally positioned. He watched as Marcus moved through a series of precisely controlled movements. The kata was clean, technically proficient, but entirely unremarkable by Centaurian standards. "Interesting," Zexthor commented diplomatically, though perhaps somewhat limited in scope. "Your species' physical constraints must make advanced techniques quite challenging." Marcus accepted the wooden sword from a student and replied, "Every limitation brings its own opportunities. Master Zexthor, would you care to demonstrate some of your techniques for my students? It would be educational for them to see how other cultures approach the art." The alien master unfurled his forearms, each hand grasping an energy blade that hummed to life with different harmonic frequencies. "I suppose a brief demonstration would be appropriate. It may help provide context for my evaluation." As Zexthor began his demonstration, his blades weaving complex patterns through the air, he noticed Marcus watching intently, those calm eyes missing nothing. For a moment, something about that steady gaze made him wonder if there was more to this simple human instructor than appeared on the surface. But then he dismissed the thought. After all, how could a species that hadn't even mastered gravitational manipulation truly understand the higher forms of blade artistry? This evaluation would be straightforward, if somewhat diplomatically challenging. He had no idea how wrong that assumption would prove to be. The Grand Solar Exhibition Hall buzzed with anticipation as beings from across the galaxy gathered to witness Master Zexthor's demonstration. Light filtered through the transparent dome above, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. The alien master stood in the center of the demonstration circle, his 4 arms held in perfect ceremonial position. Today, I shall demonstrate why the Centaurian blade arts are considered supreme throughout known space, Zexthor announced, his voice carrying easily through the hall. His scales rippled with subtle colors as he activated his energy blades, each humming at a different pitch to create a harmonious chord. In the front row, Marcus sat cross-legged, that same quiet smile on his face as he opened his leather-bound journal. His wooden practice sword lay across his lap, looking absurdly simple among the advanced weapons carried by other observers. The first challenger, a master from the Proxima system, stepped forward with her phase shift blade. She moved with liquid grace, her weapon leaving trails of quantum displacement in the air. Zexthor deflected her attacks with his lower arms, while his upper arms wove a complex pattern of counterstrikes. Within moments, the Proximan master yielded, her blade disabled by a precise energy pulse from Zexthor's third blade. The audience applauded appreciatively, but Marcus simply made a note in his journal. An impressive display of energy manipulation. Marcus commented softly to himself, his pen moving steadily across the paper. 3 more challengers faced the Centaurian master, each representing different schools of cosmic blade arts. A Syrian weapon master with his gravity blade, a Pleiadian light weaver with her solar staff, and an Orion belt champion with quantum-locked edges. Each fell to Zexthor's superior technique and 4-armed mastery. Who else dares test their skills? Zexthor called out, his scales now pulsing with victory colors. His energy blades spun in a celebratory pattern, drawing appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Marcus closed his journal and stood quietly. If I may, Master Zexthor, I would be honored to learn from your expertise. A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. The Centaurian master's secondary eyes blinked in surprise, then amusement. With a wooden sword, Earthmaster. If you permit it, Marcus replied, bowing respectfully as he entered the circle. Zexthor dimmed his energy blades to their lowest setting. I shall restrict myself to 2 arms, to make this more sporting. Marcus took his stance, wooden sword held in a simple ready position. No energy field surrounded him, no technological enhancements enhanced his movements. Several alien observers leaned forward, curious to see how this primitive practitioner would fare. The match began. Marcus moved with the same efficient grace he had shown in his dojo, but now there was something else beneath the surface, a coiled readiness that made Zexthor's scales ripple with instinctive warning. The Centaurian master struck with his upper right blade, expecting an easy disarm. Marcus's wooden sword met the energy blade at precisely the right angle, deflecting rather than blocking. The simple movement spoke of countless hours of practice. Still, practice could not overcome the laws of physics. Zexthor's second strike caught the wooden sword's tip, sending it spinning from Marcus's hands. The match ended as quickly as everyone expected, though something felt off about the human's performance. An admirable attempt, Zexthor announced graciously. Your form shows dedication to your art, limited though it may be. Marcus retrieved his sword and bowed deeply. Thank you for the lesson, Master Zexthor. Every defeat brings new understanding. As the human returned to his seat, Zexthor noticed something curious. Despite being disarmed, Marcus showed no signs of disappointment or frustration. Instead, he opened his journal once more and continued making notes, that same knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. For a moment, the Centaurian master felt a flicker of unease. Then he dismissed it, turning to acknowledge the applause of the crowd. After all, what could a human armed with wood possibly know that he, a master of energy blades, did not? The answer to that question would soon shake his understanding of martial arts to its very core. A blinding flash lit up the afternoon sky, followed by a deep electromagnetic pulse that rippled through the exhibition hall. The advanced lighting systems flickered and died, plunging the venue into an eerie twilight broken only by sunlight streaming through the dome above. "Solar storm," someone called out. "Class 7 magnitude." Panic spread through the crowd as energy blades sputtered and died. Gravity stabilizers failed, causing several alien dignitaries to stumble as Earth's natural gravity reasserted itself. Zexthor's own blades dimmed to useless crystal rods, their power cores temporarily overloaded. Then the security doors malfunctioned. A group of masked figures burst through the emergency exits, wielding primitive projectile weapons and metal blades. They had clearly planned their attack to coincide with the solar storm, knowing it would disable the advanced security systems. "Nobody move," the leader shouted. "We're here for the Centaurian blade crystals." Zexthor's scales shifted to warning colors, but without his energy blades, his combat effectiveness was severely reduced. The weight of Earth's gravity pulled at his 4 arms, making movement awkward and slow. "The crystals, now," the intruder demanded, advancing toward Zexthor with a steel blade. A wooden sword spun through the air, striking the leader's wrist with surgical precision. The blade clattered to the floor as Marcus stepped forward, another practice sword held casually in his right hand. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Marcus said quietly. His stance had changed completely from the exhibition match. Gone was the simple practitioner. In his place stood someone who moved with lethal certainty. 3 attackers rushed him simultaneously. Marcus flowed between them like water, his wooden sword moving in patterns Zexthor had never seen before. The first attacker fell to a precision strike to the nerve cluster behind his ear, a Chinese technique perfected over centuries. The second met a lightning-fast thrust to the solar plexus, delivered with European fencing accuracy. The third attacker's blade met empty air as Marcus seemed to disappear, only to emerge behind him with a Japanese sword-drawing technique that ended with the wooden blade pressed against the base of the man's skull. "Drop your weapons," Marcus commanded, and the remaining intruders found themselves facing a man who suddenly seemed to fill the space with his presence. One tried to aim a projectile weapon. Marcus's sword moved in an arc that shouldn't have been possible with human joints, disarming the man with a technique that looked almost Centaurian in its execution. Yet it was entirely human, developed by warriors who had studied the flight of eagles. "Impossible," Zexthor whispered, his secondary eyes wide with disbelief. The human was switching between completely different fighting styles with each movement, adapting his technique to each new threat with impossible speed. As local security forces finally arrived to handle the attackers, Marcus began checking on injured guests. He moved with the same efficient grace he had shown in practice, but now Zexthor recognized it for what it was: complete mastery disguised as simplicity. "You were holding back," Zexthor stated as Marcus helped him adjust to Earth's gravity. Marcus smiled. "In the exhibition, of course. A true martial artist knows when to show his skill and when to keep it hidden." He helped a fallen dignitary to their feet. "Besides, it's not about proving superiority. It's about being ready when the moment calls for action. But the techniques you used, they were from completely different schools of combat. Earth has thousands of martial arts traditions, Master Zexthor, each one developed to solve different problems. Why limit yourself to one solution when you can learn from them all?" As power slowly returned to the exhibition hall, Zexthor watched Marcus continue to assist others, moving with that same understated efficiency. The human had demonstrated more skill in those few moments than many masters achieved in a lifetime, yet he sought no praise for it. The Centaurian master looked at his powered-down energy blades, then at the simple wooden sword that had proven so devastatingly effective. Perhaps, he realized, he had much more to learn about the art of combat than he had imagined. And perhaps his evaluation of Earth's martial arts would need significant revision. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Zexthor arrived at the academy grounds. His scales shifted to match the pre-dawn colors as he moved silently toward the sound that had drawn him here. the whisper of wooden sword cutting through air. In the academy's central courtyard, Marcus moved through his morning practice. The human master flowed from one form to another, his wooden sword tracing patterns that Zexthor now recognized as far more sophisticated than he had initially believed. First came the circular movements of Chinese sword forms, the blade describing perfect spirals in the air. Without pause, these transformed into the linear strikes of European longsword techniques. Then, as smooth as flowing water, the movements shifted to the precise angles of Japanese katana forms. Zexthor watched from the shadows, his forearms unconsciously mimicking some of the movements. "Fascinating," he whispered, his secondary eyes tracking the subtle weight shifts and footwork that made such transitions possible. Marcus completed his sequence and turned toward the Centaurian master. "Good morning, Master Zexthor. Would you care to join me? You knew I was here. The morning dew on the grass shows footprints, if you know how to read them." Marcus gestured to a weapon rack. "Perhaps you'd like to try a wooden sword. Sometimes the simplest tools teach the deepest lessons." Zexthor hesitated, then stepped forward. "I admit, after yesterday's events, I find myself curious about your methods." He selected a practice sword with his upper right hand, the weapon feeling strange without its familiar energy field. "In our history," Marcus explained, demonstrating a basic stance, different cultures developed unique approaches to combat. Some studied the power of tigers, others the precision of cranes. A few even based their techniques on the movement of planets and stars. The Centaurian master attempted to mirror the stance, his forearms making the simple position surprisingly complicated. "This feels inefficient. Every limitation is an opportunity to learn," Marcus said, adjusting Zexthor's grip slightly. "Your extra arms give you advantages in some situations, but they can be a hindrance in others. True mastery comes from understanding both your strengths and weaknesses." They spent the next hour working through basic forms. Zexthor found himself struggling with movements that looked deceptively simple. His scales shifted through patterns of concentration and occasional frustration. "How many different sword styles does your planet maintain?" he asked during a brief rest. Marcus smiled. "Hundreds of primary schools, each with dozens of variations. Some focus on power, others on speed. Some were developed for armored combat, others for spiritual enlightenment. Each contains wisdom earned through centuries of practice and refinement. But surely with modern technology, most of these techniques are obsolete. Are they?" Marcus picked up his wooden sword again. Yesterday proved that technology can fail, but the knowledge in these forms. He moved through a complex sequence that seemed to draw from multiple styles simultaneously. This knowledge lives in the body, in the mind, in the spirit. It cannot be disrupted by solar storms or power failures. As the sun climbed higher, more students began arriving for morning practice. They watched with interest as the renowned Centaurian blade master worked through basic earth sword forms, his forearms learning to move in new ways. "Every movement contains a lesson," Marcus explained, demonstrating how a defensive technique could flow into an attack. "The sword is not just a weapon. It's a teacher. It shows us our imbalances, our assumptions, our limitations." Zexthor found himself nodding. With each passing minute, he began to see the layers of wisdom hidden within these seemingly primitive techniques. His initial dismissal of Earth's martial arts now seemed embarrassingly premature. "I believe," he said finally, holding the wooden sword with newfound respect, "that I have much to learn from your world's traditions." Marcus bowed slightly. "And perhaps we have things to learn from yours as well. After all, the true martial artist never stops being a student." As they continued practicing in the growing morning light, Zexthor realized that his evaluation mission had become something far more significant, a journey of discovery that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the art of the sword. Dawn had not yet broken when Zexthor entered the private dojo, his scales dimmed to match the shadows. Marcus was already there, arranging wooden training weapons with methodical precision. The Centaurian Master's request for secret training sessions had raised eyebrows among his peers, but his curiosity had overcome his pride. "Today," Marcus said, handing Zexthor a wooden staff, "we'll explore how humans learn to adapt their techniques based on observations of nature." He picked up his own staff, weathered wood smooth from years of practice. "Watch how a crane moves before it strikes." Marcus demonstrated, his movements becoming fluid and precise, weight shifting with deceptive ease. The staff moved like an extension of his body, mimicking the grace of the bird he described. Zexthor attempted to copy the motion, his forearms struggling to find harmony with the simple weapon. "I don't understand," Zexthor admitted, his scales flickering with frustration. "My energy blades allow for far more efficient strikes." "Efficiency isn't always about the shortest path to victory," Marcus explained, adjusting the Centaurian's grip. "Sometimes it's about understanding the fundamental principles that govern all movement." As they practiced, other masters from distant worlds began arriving at the academy, drawn by rumors of the unlikely partnership. They gathered discreetly to watch as the renowned Centaurian blade master learned to move like earth creatures. The powerful sweep of a tiger's paw, the coiled strike of a snake, the relentless flow of a river. "Your species studied animals for combat techniques," a visiting Syrian weapons master asked from the doorway, her crystalline form refracting the morning light. "We studied everything," Marcus replied, demonstrating how a spinning staff technique mimicked a falcon's dive. "Every movement in nature contains wisdom, if you know how to observe it." Zexthor found himself adapting more quickly than expected. His forearms, initially a hindrance with traditional weapons, began finding new ways to move. Rather than fighting Earth's gravity, he learned to work with it, letting momentum flow through his movements like water around stones. "There's a philosophy behind each style," Marcus explained during a brief rest. "The crane teaches patience and precision. The tiger shows us timing and power. The river reminds us to be adaptable, to flow around obstacles rather than always trying to break through them." A small crowd had gathered outside the dojo now, masters from a dozen worlds watching with growing interest. They witnessed something unprecedented: the blending of Centaurian multi-line techniques with Earth's ancient wisdom. "Show them the dragon form," an elderly Chinese master called from the doorway, his eyes twinkling with approval. Marcus nodded and began moving through a complex series of techniques. His staff traced patterns in the air that seemed to defy physics, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next. Zexthor watched intently, his secondary eyes tracking subtle details his primary vision missed. "I see it now," Zexthor said softly. "Each movement contains elements of multiple creatures. The power of the tiger, the precision of the crane, the fluidity of the snake. Just as each living thing carries wisdom," Marcus replied. "Each style of combat offers unique insights. The true master learns to see these connections, to understand how all things are related." As the morning progressed, more alien masters joined their practice. The private session had transformed into an impromptu symposium of martial arts, with knowledge flowing freely between worlds. A Pleiadian lightweaver demonstrated how her people's techniques resembled the movement of solar flares. An Orion weapon master shared forms based on the dance of binary stars. "This is unprecedented," whispered a visiting dignitary. "Never have so many combat traditions been shared so openly." Zexthor, his scales now shimmering with colors of enlightenment, realized that his journey had become something far greater than personal growth. They were breaking down barriers that had separated martial arts traditions for millennia, creating something entirely new in the process. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the dojo windows, Marcus smiled at his unlikely student, ready to try the advanced forms. Zexthor gripped his staff with all four hands, his movements now carrying the weight of both Earth's wisdom and his own traditions. "Ready, Master Marcus. Show me what else your world has to teach." The Centennial Tournament arena stretched like a blooming lotus in space, its crystalline petals refracting starlight into rainbow cascades. Representatives from 50 star systems filled the observation rings, their anticipation charging the air with electric tension. At the center stage, Marcus stood quietly, his wooden sword held in a relaxed grip that belied its deadly precision. The human competitor appears to be using traditional weapons. The announcer's voice carried a note of disbelief. This is most unusual for the Advanced Combat Division. Zexthor, watching from the Master's observation deck, noticed the subtle shifts in Marcus's stance that he had learned to recognize over their training sessions. The human Master wasn't just ready. He was perfectly centered, like the eye of a storm. The first round began against a Syrian blade dancer, her quantum-edged sword humming with barely contained energy. She moved like lightning, her weapon leaving traces of probability distortions in its wake. Marcus simply stepped aside, his wooden sword intercepting her blade at exactly the right angle to redirect its energy. Impossible. Someone gasped as the quantum blade was turned aside by simple wood. Not impossible, Zexthor murmured. Perfect understanding of angles and force, developed through thousands of years of human combat experience. The match ended with Marcus's wooden sword resting lightly against his opponent's neck, his movement so swift that many observers had missed it entirely. The Syrian Master bowed deeply, genuine respect in her crystalline eyes. As the tournament progressed, Marcus revealed new depths to his mastery with each round. Against a Pleiadian lightweaver, he demonstrated techniques from Earth's shadow warriors, moving through patches of darkness with ghost-like grace. When facing an Andromedan gravity manipulator, he used principles from ancient Chinese Tai Chi to turn the opponent's power against them. He's showing us something new each time, a visiting weapons master observed. No, not new. Very, very old. The quarterfinals brought Marcus face to face with a four-armed Proximan wielding thermal blades. The audience expected him to finally switch to an energy weapon. But instead, he pulled out a second wooden sword. His movements shifted to an ancient Japanese two-sword style, adapted seamlessly to counter multiple limbs. Notice how he never wastes energy, Zexthor explained to the amazed observers. Every movement serves multiple purposes, defense and attack flowing together like water. The semifinals pitted Marcus against a quantum phase warrior from the Orion Belt. The warrior could shift between dimensional states, becoming virtually untouchable. Marcus responded with techniques developed by Earth's blind sword masters, fighting by sensing intent rather than relying on vision. How can he track an opponent shifting through dimensions? The announcer demanded. He's reading the flow of energy, Zexthor responded, his scales rippling with appreciation. A technique developed by human masters who learned to fight in total darkness centuries ago. The final round approached, and the arena hummed with unprecedented excitement. Marcus stood calmly in the preparation chamber, maintaining his wooden swords while others charged their energy weapons. You knew this would happen, Zexthor said, visiting his former teacher before the final match. You've been preparing for this moment all along. Marcus smiled, running a cloth along the grain of his wooden sword. Every technique I've shown has been a lesson, not just in combat, but in understanding. Each round revealed another aspect of human martial arts that your people had overlooked. And in the finals, I will show them why humans never abandoned their traditional weapons, even after reaching the stars. Marcus stood, both wooden swords sliding smoothly into their scabbards. Some wisdom is timeless. As Marcus stepped onto the arena floor for the final match, the gathered masters from across the galaxy leaned forward in their seats. They had come expecting to see the limits of human martial arts. Instead, they were witnessing the renaissance of combat traditions older than some of their civilizations. The final round was about to begin. And with it, a demonstration of human martial arts that would change galactic combat culture forever. The final match was about to begin when every light in the massive arena suddenly flickered and died. Emergency systems activated briefly, then failed. The artificial gravity fluctuated, causing panic in the observation rings until the backup generators stabilized the essential systems. Technical difficulties, The announcer's voice crackled through failing speakers. "Please remain calm while we—" The message cut off abruptly. In the dimness of emergency lighting, Marcus stood unwavering, his wooden sword steady in his hands. Across the arena, his final opponent, Grandmaster Helix of the Vega system, found his quantum phase armor sputtering and failing. "The match must be postponed," one of the judges called out, "without proper power for the safety fields." "Let them continue," Zexthor's voice carried across the arena. "This is no accident. This is the final lesson." In the center of the arena, Marcus assumed a stance that seemed to draw from multiple Earth traditions simultaneously. "Ready when you are, Grandmaster Helix." The vegan master's crystalline face showed confusion, then determination. Even without his quantum phase technology, he was still one of the most formidable warriors in the galaxy. His body began emitting a natural bioluminescence, adapting to the darkness. The match began. Helix moved with incredible speed, his natural abilities unfettered by failing technology. His strikes came from multiple angles, each capable of shattering stone. Marcus met them with movements that seemed to defy physics, his wooden swords always exactly where they needed to be. "Watch closely," Zexthor instructed the gathered masters. Every movement contained centuries of human combat wisdom. Marcus flowed between styles like water changing course. When Helix attacked high, he responded with low Chinese sword forms. When the vegan master used his species' natural ability to split into light fragments, Marcus switched to ancient blind fighting techniques, tracking his opponent by sound and air movement. "Extraordinary," breathed the Pleiadian observer. Without technology, the human's capabilities remain unchanged. The match intensified. Helix, frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, began emitting pulses of bioelectrical energy. Marcus adapted instantly, using techniques developed by Earth warriors who had learned to fight during lightning storms. "How many styles is he using?" someone asked in awe. "All of them," Zexthor replied softly. "And none of them. He has moved beyond individual styles to understand the principles that unite them all." The decisive moment came when Helix launched his most powerful attack, his body becoming a living storm of light and energy. Marcus stood perfectly still, wooden swords held in a crossguard position. At the last possible instant, he moved. The movement combined the timing of a striking snake, the power of a tiger's leap, and the precision of a crane's strike. Both wooden swords touched exactly the right pressure points on Helix's crystalline form, disrupting his bioenergy matrix. The vegan master froze, then slowly sank to his knees. "How?" "Your species channels energy through crystal matrices," Marcus explained, helping his opponent up. Earth martial artists learned similar principles, studying the flow of life energy through the human body. The techniques are different, but the underlying wisdom is the same. As the emergency lights gradually came back on, a profound silence fell over the arena. Every master present understood they had witnessed something unprecedented, a demonstration of martial arts transcending technology, drawing purely on knowledge passed down through generations of human warriors. "This," Zexthor announced to the gathered assembly, "is why Earth's traditional combat arts have survived unchanged for millennia. They do not rely on technology that can fail. They do not depend on power sources that can be disrupted. They rely on understanding of motion, of energy, of the fundamental principles that govern all combat." Marcus bowed to his opponent, then to the assembled masters. In the renewed light, his wooden sword seemed to carry a different kind of power. Not the flashy energy of advanced technology, but the quiet strength of wisdom tested by time. The Galactic martial arts community would never be the same. The great hall of the Solar Arts Academy buzzed with activity as masters from across the galaxy gathered for the graduation ceremony. Sunlight streamed through the crystal dome, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd. At the center of the stage, Marcus and Zexthor stood side by side, their contrasting forms representing the bridge between traditions. 1 year ago, Zexthor addressed the gathering, his scales shimmering with colors of ceremony. I came to Earth believing I would find primitive combat techniques worthy only of historical note. Instead, I discovered wisdom that has transformed our understanding of martial arts forever. The first graduating class sat in the front row, a mix of species from 20 different star systems. Each student wore the simple gray robes of Earth's traditional martial arts, with additions that honored their own cultural heritage. Assyrian's crystalline form refracted light through her belt, while a Pleiadian's natural glow harmonized with the earthen fabric. Today marks not just the graduation of our first interstellar class, Marcus continued, his wooden sword resting peacefully at his side. It represents the beginning of a new era in martial arts, one where ancient wisdom and modern understanding flow together like tributary streams joining a mighty river. The students rose as one, demonstrating a synchronized form that combined elements from Earth's traditional styles with their own species' natural abilities. A four-armed centaurian moved with the grace of a crane, while a quantum phase vegan demonstrated the rooted stability of mountain stance. "Look how they move," whispered an observing master. The techniques adapt to each species' unique form, yet the underlying principles remain pure. Zexthor stepped forward, his four arms moving through a complex pattern that would have been impossible for him a year ago. Earth has taught us that true mastery lies not in the weapon or the technology, but in understanding. Understanding of movement, of energy, of the eternal principles that govern all combat. The ceremony continued as each graduate demonstrated their mastery. A Pleiadian lightweaver performed in ancient Chinese sword form, her natural bioluminescence tracing patterns in the air that perfectly complemented the traditional movements. An Andromedan gravity manipulator demonstrated how Earth's soft-style techniques enhanced his natural abilities. "The Academy has received applications from every major system," Marcus announced, pride evident in his voice. "More importantly, we've received offers from masters across the galaxy willing to share their own ancient wisdom. This exchange of knowledge will enrich all our traditions." From his position at the front, Zexthor watched as his fellow Centaurians in the audience shifted their scales to colors of appreciation and understanding. His own journey from skeptic to advocate had helped pave the way for this transformation in galactic martial arts culture. Each graduate here today carries forward not just techniques, Marcus continued, but responsibility. You are the first of a new generation of warriors who understand that true strength comes not from technology or physical power alone, but from the wisdom passed down through countless generations across countless worlds. The ceremony reached its peak as the graduates performed one final demonstration. Moving in perfect harmony, they showed how Earth's ancient forms could be adapted to any body type, any number of limbs, any natural ability. The display combined the precision of Japanese sword work, the flowing power of Chinese internal arts, and the strategic brilliance of European combat schools. "And so we come full circle," Zexthor concluded, his scales now shimmering with all the colors of dawn. "I came to teach, but instead learned a lesson that will echo through generations. The greatest strength lies not in dismissing the old ways, but in understanding why they endured." As the ceremony ended and the graduates dispersed to share their knowledge across the galaxy, Marcus and Zexthor stood together watching the sunset through the crystal dome. The human master held his simple wooden sword, while the Centaurian's four arms cradled both energy blades and traditional weapons. "What comes next?" Zexthor asked, his secondary eyes tracking the changing colors of the sky. Marcus smiled, the same quiet expression he had worn during their first encounter. "We keep learning. After all, every master remains forever a student." The galactic martial arts renaissance had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the story of combat across the stars. The journey that started with an alien master dismissing a human swordsman had transformed into something far greater, a bridge between worlds, traditions, and wisdom that would endure for generations to come.